Hello, welcome to Jadekind Gaming. My name is Adam, and today I have another actually building a world video. The fifth actually building a world video. Today, in addition to going over, again, more just notes on this world that I've been working on for, it feels like forever now, and yet I have so much more to do. I'm always coming up with new notes and new ideas for it. Some main things will be a couple of races, which I think I have to a point where they're, I guess, at least ready to playtest. And World Anvil, which I am not sponsored by. They do not know me. Although, when I link below, I might have an affiliate link, because I did just notice earlier today there is an affiliate program on there. I was like, I might sign up for that. I've done that for some other places. But last time, where we left off, I was struggling with organization of my notes for the world, because I just have more stuff for it than I've really had in any world before. And I'd moved things from just like a couple of text documents to like one Google Doc, where I have everything in sections, and it was better, but still not ideal, and that's still where a lot of my notes sit. I'm not sure I'm going to switch over to World Anvil, but I'm going to give it a try. And I've been giving it a bit of a try. See if maybe it can help me organize notes better. And it'll also allow things to be viewable. Like I can link to, I believe, my world document below, and you, or whoever, can go look at it and look at the information that's there. Because I think I said last time, I don't know if I'm ever going to get this published. Not the easiest for me to get to that finished point, but I get a lot of finished ideas. I just don't have enough all tied together to then finalize a product most of the time. But this will allow something to be publicly accessible, other than you pausing my video or whatever, where if you're like, ooh, I want to try out that race, or that subclass, or whatever, that alternate rule, whatever it may be, you would be able to go there and access it, read it at your leisure, do whatever you want with it. And I think at the very least, if my ideas have potential for helping people other than my own immediate group, cool. Steal ideas. Have fun in your games. That's what D&D is all about. So, I'm gonna give World Anvil a try. And I'll get to that here in a bit. First, let's just look again at the Google Doc. Now, I'm actually going to quickly go through some things. For example, I have Dwarf subraces. I'm going to skip over that. We'll look at those on World Anvil, because those are part of what I have on there. I note here, maybe optional rules sidebar explaining dwarves made out of materials that are used for spells can basically self-harm, damage themselves to supplement materials of that type. But as you'll see with Ruby Dwarves, I think I have a better idea. But that, I came up with the idea. I was like, let's at least write that in the notes. I might change to it. I came up with an idea, perhaps creation myth, creation legend, whatever you want to call it, relating to humans and elves. Because somehow they are connected. Because there are half-elves. So, to some extent, they're the same species, and yet different. So, I thought, and that's always sort of a thought, is what makes those two more connected than, say, other race choices? So I came up with, two small tribes at the beginning of time. Brought to one of the heavens. My heavens are my, upper planes, is the name for them collectively. Perhaps named Eden. Definitely have lots of biblical reference in the heavens and hells, because it's fun. And they're given a choice. One tribe chooses to eat from the tree of knowledge, leading on to be humans. The other tribe choosing to eat from the tree of life, leading on to be elves. And an idea that just sort of came to me as I'm sitting in church. I'm thinking, and I'm like, you know what? Because obviously, you know, Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, leading down the line of what humans are. But particularly it came to me thinking about what my ideas for what my elf lore is. Because the idea is I'm making the elves truly immortal. They do not, through nature, die. They can be killed, but they do not die. But I also like to explain the idea of why don't elves that you start with have like every skill proficient and like all proficiencies. You know, if I've lived for 8,000 years now, why don't I just know all that stuff? Because the idea is the elves go through seasons, and they basically have things just leave their mind as they focus on this new thing that's important to them. And I mean, and there are certainly glimpses and glints that they're like, oh yes, I know I knew how to do that. I spent 800 years perfecting the art of smithing. I knew how to do it. I moved on, though. Have you tried painting? And so they're not proficient with smithing at this point. They were, but now it's painting. It's all about paint. So that idea that they're not holding on to that knowledge, but their life carries... I don't know. Again, these are all just ideas and rough thoughts that I have for building the world. Perhaps. I reference here my aberration-powered anti-magic ghast used during wartime. I have the... Continent 1 has that big war in the time frame that the main game takes place, which is anti-magic people versus magic people. And big weapon of anti-magic people is the gas that is basically an anti-magic field. Plus, it's how they permeate their cities in it so that there is no magic in their cities. And I've been trying to pin down how is this going to work. So, at least a potential idea. Once it's in a gas, or once you are in the gas, you make a save every round until you fail. No, you succeeded, don't have to save again. No. Until you fail, you have to make the save every round, every 6 seconds. But you know you're making the save, so if it's like a grenade of the gas, this is doing something, leave. So you're aware of it. While you're having to make those saves. And if you stay in the gas for, let's say, a minute, let's say it lasts D6 minutes after you leave the gas. If you are in it for an hour, maybe it's D8 hours afterwards. If you're in it for a day, it lasts for days. A week, it lasts for weeks. A month, it lasts for months, etc. And I might adjust, does it just go D6, D8, D10, D12? Maybe, maybe not. But it should last a long time after you leave the gas. For one, just for that nation, that anti-magic nation to work. I mean, they're pumping the gas up into their cities. But it's not like it's something like they don't have like the meat, and they may, fly over areas that are out there and like pour gas down over... maybe a small village that doesn't have it, like, they'll gas it every so often. or whatever. But it's not like the entire countryside is just permeated with this gas. No. So in order for them to control it, obviously it has to work where once people leave it, they still can't cast magic for at least a while. And furthermore, I thought perhaps magic items instantly stop working without a save, but resume working after like D whatever rounds once they leave it. Which would mean magic equipment, because this is just trying to come up with ideas for how there can be conflict between these nations. Like, let's say you're playing people from the magic nation, and you're trying to infiltrate the anti-magic nation and do something. And once you go into that city, it's only going to be a matter of time until you roll a 1 and you will fail, and you will not be able to do magic. And the longer you're there, the longer it's going to be before you can again. But if you have items that, okay, once I get out of the gas, these will quickly become available to me again, then that makes magical equipment power, just ideas. Came up with idea for another plane. A hell, probably, of madness. Wonderland. Of obvious inspiration. Then we get to another race, Fairies. Again, we will go over them in World Anvil. And then another race, Tree Folk. Again, we will go over them in World Anvil, and we will actually... I'm going to do an example and show you how I put the other couple races in there with Tree Folk before we look at it. You'll notice I have all the HTML code on these from doing that. So there are race info for there. Now, specifically with those races, the idea is I have a tiny race and a huge, using weapons as large, race. So one of the things I was like, okay, I need to do is have equipment of alternate sizes. D&D 5th edition basically says, here's your equipment. It's the same statistics for a medium creature and a small creature. That's all that exists. Go. And then you kind of figure things out in the monster manual that really there are other sizes and it does exist. And there's things like, oh, I can use a larger one, but I have this advantage. Or maybe the DM just says no. But they don't really go into it. But why not? That could be fun. And if I'm going to have races of those sizes, I need that. So just basically opening up the option. You can purchase weapons that are larger or smaller than standard. Because that is useful to those who fit into those other size categories. Because Wizards is afraid of any race that isn't medium or small. I'm not. Let's try it. It's fun. Yeah, there's some things to consider, and I'll show you some of the things I consider. But it's fun. So, if you're buying a weapon of an alternate size in a community that does not frequently have people of that size within it, the price doubles. And you'll probably have to wait some time for the item to be created, which could be the next day or even another week. Just based on the idea, okay, they're going to have to custom craft this. It's up to the DM to decide how long does it take, and really that's up to the story. If the story needs to get moving along and we need you out of the city now, well then, sure, they'll have it for you tomorrow morning. Double the cost, pay for it, come back in the morning, and you're good to go. If you're trying to keep the characters in the city for a while, well, it's going to be another week. Or I have to get components in from the next town over. It'll be 3 weeks before I can get that done. Whatever you need, it can fit the story. It doesn't matter. It's not broken in either way. You just adjust the price, and it's fine. I'm not afraid of giving someone extra dice of damage. Whatever. Costs twice as much money. It gives more options for things to buy. The weapon damages table, which I'll get to, shows how much damage each weapon made for a tiny or a large creature does when compared to that of a standard weapon, which is designed for a medium or small. Weapons designed for a tiny creature weigh a quarter the standard weapon's weight, and those designed for a large creature weigh 4 times more. Furthermore, the attack range for a weapon designed for a tiny creature is halved, rounding up to the nearest 5 feet increment. So, at least at this point, and obviously none of this is play-tested, tried out, any of that, I probably need some sort of stipulation that even in a society of larger size creatures, the large weapons probably should always be double cost. Makes sense. Just because more material. But it's also double cost in a society that isn't for small. Tiny weapons are going to be more expensive because you have to custom make it. It's unusual. It's not what I'm used to. I've decreased the range of tiny creatures' weapons, kind of. Because it rounds up to the nearest 5 feet. So all melee weapons, well, it's a 5-foot range, cuts down and rounds up to 5 feet. If it's a 10-foot reach, well, now it's no longer reach. And ranged weapons, basically, are what's cut in half. So we've reduced that. I have not increased the size of large creatures' weapons, and I don't know if I need to. And basically, I have the chart here. Standard weapon damage If it does 1 damage, tiny would still do a 1, large would do double. If it normally does a d4, same for tiny, large does double. If it normally does a d6, tiny is down to a d4, while the large doubles. If it normally does a d8, tiny creature, again, down to a d4, while the large doubles. So that's just sort of a big range of all of those are cut down to much smaller damage. A d10 goes down to a d6 for tiny, but doubles for a large creature. d12 down to a d8 for a tiny creature, but doubles for a large creature. 2d6 down to 2d4 for a tiny creature, but doubles again for a large. So that's pretty standard there. And then I have a little to-do note, which is just ideas, but I haven't really fleshed them out. I want to come up with some sort of feat for using a whip, because that just as I was going through this, I was like, okay, that is a weapon that I feel like there could be more done with it. It could have use, but it doesn't feel like it does currently, other than flavor. So a feat would probably do that, and also a feat for like larger weapons, maybe enough to like give a medium-sized creature the ability to wield the weapon of a large creature normally or something. I don't know, just idea with that. And then I have a note to remove huge weapons, which I have done just by doing a darkened cloud over here. Because I originally made huge weapons because my tree folk are huge. But I gave them, you'll see, limbs that wield large creature weapons. Just felt better to not get too out of control with it. Now, through that, I skipped over the races. Didn't we want to look at the races? Well, let's do that. So here I have my page for my world on World Anvil. I just call it extended setting because I don't have a name for it yet. It is testing out the platform to see if I wish to move my notes here. I'm not committing at this point, but I got some stuff in here. Because I'm paranoid, the first thing I put in was I put a document that has the open game license, just cover my bases. So let's see, I have Dwarves. I was looking at Dwarves, let's look at Dwarves. So I have my notes from earlier from Dwarves that I've gone over in some previous previous video. And then I have Dwarves. Now, there are ways to alter the formatting and the CSS and all that, and I can control this a lot more now than I could when I've set all this up, because all of this is set up under free. Everything that I'm showing can be done with the free version of World Anvil, other than there would be a like a banner ad here. As it is, I can either remove this and everything stretch out, which I don't like the way the stat block looked stretched all the way out, or I could fill in more information here. I actually at one point played with putting the main notes here and the sub races over on the side. Again, didn't like it, but I could use this like a sidebar for, whether I want to put prose in there or whether I want to have little any sort of sidebar notes. So different formatting options for the page, which I have a lot more control over than I understand right now, because again, all of this I played with free, figured out how to do free. Everything I'm showing you can do free. I just signed up for the paid version before filming this to get rid of the banner ads, and I'll play around with a lot of the features it adds and probably enjoy them, but there's a lot that you can do with the free version, is I guess what I'm trying to point out. So if you, like me, are considering it, probably worth at least checking it out. So I have this, and like in the template that I found, I'll show you, there's 2 templates I found. One of them has a lot of mumbo jumbo like this at the top. I found one that only has a little bit, and then I can just format everything the way I want. Now that I'm paid, I think I can technically do like a normal, just generic text block and then format things from there. I haven't done so yet, but maybe at some point. For now, anyways, we have Dwarf traits from the system reference document, minus combat training and tool proficiency. Then we get the half-dwarf, which is the same as hill dwarf. And you see here, I have the stuff they get and their combat training and tool proficiency. So half-dwarfs are the exact same as a hill dwarf would be if you made them in the player's handbook. But I have my other versions of dwarf, which are, in my world, half-dwarfs are like dwarves that are what you probably think of as dwarves. They're fleshy, like people. True dwarfs are made of the materials of the planet, whether it's the metals or the stone or the gems. Like, they are literally made of that material. That is what they are. An iron dwarf is a living being of iron. A ruby dwarf is a living being of ruby. So, taking the normal dwarf stat block, minusing combat training, tool proficiency. For iron dwarfs are sturdy folk, whose skills with working metal are valued far and wide. Well, of course they are. They are metal. And dwarfs have a body modification culture, which is why, half-dwarfs do, like, all the fancy stuff in their beard, because that's what they can, they can decorate their beard and get tattoos and all that, because that's how they can body modify. Iron dwarfs can do smithing on themselves. And so, they can add extra bits of metal or work the metal into the shape they want. I mean, so their +1 is to dexterity. I give them natural armor made of same metal that others craft armor out of. AC of 13 plus dexterity mod. As long as you're not wearing armor, you can still use a shield. And then proficiency with smith tools, because that would be how they'd modify themselves. So, iron dwarves, just simple. You are made of metal. Ruby dwarves. So ruby dwarves expanded into the wider world. They brought renewable sources of magical light due to their ability to use their own growth of ruby to cast an otherwise costly spell. This is to say, I had given that idea of a rule. Remember, I was like, maybe dwarves with costly material components can, like, damage themselves to be able to make up that component. And that's something that really, one of my friends was like, can they do that? Can a diamond dwarf use some of themselves, So, ruby dwarves have proficiency with jeweler's tools. That's how they modify themselves. And charisma is their +1 ability score. But they have ruby magic. They know the firebolt cantrip. Simple enough. And when you reach 5th level, you can also cast continual flame spell once with this trait, requiring no material components, and regain the ability to cast it this way when you finish a long rest. Charisma being your spellcasting ability for this spell. So this is to say, continual flame would normally require you to expend ruby or ruby dust or whatever. Instead, you just have a spell that ties to it that you can just do every day. With the fact that you continue to grow and expand as ruby, you can use that. It also means that in this being the first race I've done it with, that it allows me to have plenty of continual flame light sources throughout the world, so that I can light up all my dungeons with torches, and it makes sense why we're in a dungeon that no one has been in for 120 years. Oh good, they left the torches on. Because it's a thing. And I build with Dwarven Forge, and I have the little spots where I can put the torches, and I love the flickering light, and it's fun. Well, this gives me a way to build that into the world. And then Marble Dwarves. Marble Dwarves chiseled to perfection, quite literally. Strength is your ability increase. Tool proficiency in Mason's tools, that's how they carve themselves up. And as their extra ability, resistance against fire damage. I don't know if that's quite enough. I don't. But again, these are untested. And maybe it is fine. I don't know. It's the one that feels like, is it too weak? Is it not? when I think of things I can add to it, does it get too strong? But anyways, so we have our dwarves, and then I have little unimplemented notes here at the bottom. Just again, things copied and pasted from my other document. Yeah. Then I also have fairies. Fairies is a whole new race. I have a little section here, text here about fairies, because I don't have. They're not. Whereas dwarves, they were one of the first races I came up with as far as how I'm going to fit them into my world. Fairies, I want to have. Really, I want to have. For one, I want to have at least one tiny race, and I want to have at least one large race. I want to have races that break out of those normal size categories. So that is one of the reasons I want them. Like that is an active goal within the world, just to make it more varied, more different. So, get fairies. And we have fairy traits. Fairy character has several distinguishing traits in common with all other fairies. Dexterity increased by 2. For age, fairies tend to live fast and die young, reaching maturity as young as 10, but rarely living longer than 50 years. Most fairies being chaotic, following whims of their emotions, but they do not have a particular tendency towards good or evil. And obviously, like, that's all stuff that, yeah, I mean, you can work with, players can work with me. If you use it, you can work with your DM. Do I have to be chaotic? Of course not. It says most. Anyways, size, fairies stand about a foot tall, weigh less than 10 pounds. Your size is tiny. You have a base walking speed of 10 feet, but a fly speed of 40 feet. And your creature type is Fey, not humanoid. You have frail build. Okay, this is a particular one as far as how do I make a creature that small and not totally like limit them as far as, oh, you have like to gut all of their stats, or to gut their strength, basically. I don't want to do like a negative strength, but logically they should, right? Well, let's make it another player choice. So choose a value between 0 and 5 to reduce your strength ability score by, and a number of other ability scores equal to that value you reduced your strength score by increased by 1. So you can choose 0, and you can just have your stats as normal, ignore frail build, and just have your fairy be strong, and that's unusual, but why not? It's not going to break things. It just doesn't fit the flavor. But if you want to play that normal, I'm really tiny, I'm not going to be very strong, you can reduce your strength, you can give it a -5. And then choose 5 of your other ability scores. Core rules, the other 5. If using luck, then you would choose one of them not to get it. And basically give a +1 to each of those. So it's a slight increase to everything else in order to reduce your strength to a point where it might feel like you really are that small and frail. Fey Ancestry, you have advantage on saving throws against being charmed. Magic can't put you to sleep. Just, again, pulled out Fey Ancestry. They are fairies. Seems like they should have it. Languages, 2 of your choice. Generally, probably always going to do that because my world doesn't have race-based languages. I may have some. But in general, I'm going to end up with the languages as I develop the cultures, because it makes more sense to me for languages to be tied to like regional areas and cultures than it does your species. And then we get our 2 subraces. We get Pixies. Pixies love, more than most, to create awe and wonder with their magical skills, avoiding physical confrontation if at all possible. Charisma increases by 1, and you get Pixie Magic. One cantrip of your choice from the Druid or Sorcerer spell list, and choose one first-level spell from the Druid spell list. You can cast a spell with this trait, requiring no material components, and regain the ability to cast it this way when you finish a long rest. Charisma being your modifier for it. So that is a choice. You get choice of what is it that your pixie... So that is a huge open choice. You get to choose a cantrip, and you get to choose a first level spell. Which means you have a lot of... I like giving choice when I can, and it works. And I feel that makes it fun, and that means that there are pixies with all sorts of different options that they can do. You can go with druid for both lists and keep it very nature focused, or you can choose like one of the sorcerer ones and you get some options, some more damagey things, might be a little more useful depending on what you're doing. And then there are sprites. Sprites are fierce despite their small size, and use their cunning and stature to survive a fight against larger foes. Intelligence increases, and naturally stealthy. Attempt to hide, even when you're obscured only by a creature that is at least one size larger than you. Which that seems, I'm sure, very familiar. Isn't there, I think it's a halfling with that? But here's the difference. A halfling who has that has to hide behind a creature of medium or larger. A sprite that has it can hide behind a creature that is small or larger. So there's even more things to hide behind. And then I have the little height thing, fairies. Base height 10 inches, increased by 1d4 inches, so between 11 and 14 inches tall. And basically the weight being between like 8 and 10 pounds. So, yeah. I made fairies. Again, haven't gotten a chance to really playtest them, but I made fairies that are actually tiny. Fun. Now, didn't I have tree folk? Oh, yes, I did. There are tree folk right in here. Oh, but I don't have them on World Anvil yet. Would you like to see how I've put those in? And then we'll look at it. So, first thing we need is a stat block. So, as normal, you'd go over here, and there's a stat block. It says race, and I can add that, and create a new stat block. And it's got all this stuff. And you know how I was talking about that little chunk of built-in stuff at the top of the stat block? This is going to give all sorts of stuff up there, and I did not like it. But that's the Race 2020 stat block. I use the Race stat block, which, if I just view this blank one, I can make a duplicate. Stat blocks. Now I have two of them. I'm actually going to just delete this 2021. So now I have two. But now how did I get that to begin with? Well, if I check out the community sheets list. Oh, nope, that's actually not it. There's a... there we go. Community shared stat blocks for Dungeons & Dragons. That's the one. I'm like, I know it was one of the community things. So if I check out Community Dungeons & Dragons, I can scroll down, and there are Races 2020, and there are races. And if I click Races, I get that list to populate. It's thinking, and now I've clicked it 3 times. I can just click on any one of these to view. I don't know who made this, but I would go down, and you can make a duplicate, go to the setting, delete everything from it by editing it, and then I then saved that to have the blank one so I can just keep copying it. That way, the only stuff at the top is this here. So, tree folk, and leave this blank. And I'm actually going to come through here, copy, come here, view source, and paste. Now, in here, I'll point out, I have, and you can do it without doing it this way. You can use these tools at the top to like create your headers and to add break lines. But because I know at least basic HTML, this was easier for me. I made it like I made it in my normal Word document, and I added my header 3 for tree folk. Breakline, bolded the ability score increase. Bolded each of like the titles at the front. Had a couple break lines in between different subrace, subspecies, whatever. Like I did that through HTML because that was easier for me. But I will. Here, base walking speed of 30 feet. Size. Huge. Ability scores. +2 strength. +1 whiz. So I fill those out because those are the things that are going to be in there anyways. And then save changes. And I could view it, but really that's not what I need. I need to go to stat blocks and the tree folk, and I can just copy by clicking this little ID here for tree folk, and then I'm going to go create the actual page for the race, which I do on the dashboard down at species. Got a new one here. Tree folk. I'll probably come up with a better name eventually. I have a little bit of text to add there, so I'm going to enter a few spaces. And I'm just going to put this block text here. That is linking to that stat block that I had already made. I come here, up above tree folk, I have a little note. Copy here, so just put some stars so I know I have to edit it. Info about tree folk. And mention flowering seasons and such for tree folk species. I don't know what I actually meant by that, but I had some idea for it, so I will think about that later. Now, this here says, no, that's Storyteller Seeds. I missed, oh, so let's, other hand. Up at the top, I can there. If I click on draft, it becomes published. Although I do want to change one thing. Back over to stat box. Edit this. At the bottom here, I missed. Oh, and I can move it up. So put me back where I was. There's a spot here for table data. So, if I come down, I have this little section here. It's comma separated values, except they're separated by like these break lines. So I set this up, and this is table data. So I can add this. And now I've modified this. I'm going to save changes here, and that's the same block. So now, I go view my world, refresh the page. I've published tree folk, and I can do things to organize all this later. This is like a table of contents. I have not organized it. I will do that eventually. Tree folk. So at the top, tree folk, info about tree folk, mentioning that. We have our tree folk info, which I'll do here, and at the bottom we have our little table, which is that comma separated value bit that I pasted in the bottom. So again, things can be done with it, alter it around, but that is what is involved. Obviously, I had already came up with all the ideas, typed it up, and put the, break line in between each time I want the line to break, and bold and end bold around each thing I want bold. Header text, tags around the header. But I mean, that's just kind of very simple. Bracketed BR for break line, bracket B to start bold, bracket /B end bracket to end the bold. I think I used H3 for the header. Very basic stuff to do. And format it where I feel it looks nice. So, but we will, again, end this by going over the Treefolk traits. Again, another race I haven't play tested. But I want to have big race, and Treefolk seemed to fit the bill. So, Treefolk character has some qualities in common with other Treefolk. That's a boring line of text here, but so be it. Strength increases by 2, wisdom by 1. Treefolk reach maturity between 20 and 30 years of age. Can live to be over 500. You are a tree. Treefolk have a tendency towards law, preferring strict, orderly lifestyle, generally neutral, avoiding the greater conflicts between good and evil. Again, just generalities, but I like to have those when I can, if for no other reason than to help the game master out. Even if the players just ignore that, that's fine. I generally do when I'm a player. But as a game master, that helps me figure out, get in the mind real quick at a glance to play a creature of a race other than human. Because human's the only one I really know intimately. I got down how to be a human fairly well. I kind of have to put some thought into it to be a tree. And I've had to do that as a game master. So I like having little tidbits like that just to help me think a little different. Size. Treefolk range from 15 to 20 feet tall. Generally weigh somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 pounds. Size being huge. Base walking speed still 30 feet. You're slow, but because you're big, your speed is normal. Your creature type is plant rather than humanoid. That's fun. Natural armor due to your trunk and branches. You are ill-suited at wearing armor. I don't say strictly you can never wear armor, but you are ill-suited at it. You'd have to have something very custom-made. Your bark and wooden structure, however, served as a form of natural armor. You have AC of 16, no benefit from your dexterity modifier, and you gain no benefit from wearing armor, but may gain the bonus from wearing a shield as normal. I guess maybe I do say no benefit from wearing armor. I might reword that to just say, well, obviously you don't get this if you're wearing armor, but yeah, you can still wear a shield, so that works. As far as just giving you natural armor, because it doesn't make sense for you to just pick up a breastplate, put that on, and be like, I'm an armored tree. No, you need something special. 3 limbs. Your limb and branches are long, but grow slender by their end. You count as one size smaller when determining the size of weapons you can wield. So instead of huge, you count as large to wield weapons. Like I said, I only needed to go up to large for my weapon chart. But your reach with melee weapons is 5 feet greater than normal. So because of your size, your reach increased. So that might have been why I didn't increase the reach of weapons by size category, because that seems like something to apply to traits like this. So you can go further, but only wield large weapons. Still, large or bigger than normal. Inhabit plant is a crucial ability that seems very powerful and is very necessary for this huge creature to be playable. And while it is of great power, that power doesn't really mean anything, because all it's really letting you do is play a normal character. You have gained a useful, albeit risky, ability to allow you to travel to places too small for you to enter considering your massive size. You may touch a medium or small plant as an action to enter it and move around using its form. While in this form, your gained statistics are replaced by those of an awakened shrub, but you retain your alignment, personality, languages, and intelligence, wisdom, charisma, and luck scores. Meanwhile, your normal body roots where you leave it, is unconscious, and is indistinguishable from a normal tree. You may return to your body at any time as an action as long as you are on the same plane. You automatically return to it if you fall unconscious, drop to 0 hit points, or die. And any excess damage carries over to your normal body by the shock of the experience. If your normal body is killed or destroyed while you are not in it, or if you would be returned to your normal body while it is on a different plane, you die instantly. So, albeit risky, this is saying, hey, I touch a plant, and now I'm just in an awakened shrub and I can walk around. It does mean if you delve too deeply into the dungeon, and your shrub gets knocked unconscious, well now, I'm back at the entrance where I left my body. So not ideal for everything, but as far as I need to get inside this tavern. I touch the plant, and the shrub walks in the tavern. I'm gonna be this tree outside. It lets you interact in normal areas. Keeps you from being quite so limited. You get one language of your choice, and choose a treefolk subrace. Oak. Oaks are strong and sturdy, able to withstand more abuse than other treefolk. You gain +1 to your AC. Simple as that. You're just sturdier. You have more of that bark armor. Willow. Willows are feisty and able to use their thin branches as natural growing weapons. Oh, this might have been why I had that idea to come up with a feat for using whips. Willow whips. Your many vine-like branches can serve as naturally occurring whips, which you are proficient with. Furthermore, when you use the attack action on your turn to make a melee attack, you can use a bonus action to make an additional attack against the same target with one of your willow whips. So then if I have a feat to make whips better, then they could take that feat and they'd have more options. That's probably where that idea for I need a feat for whips came from. And then I have treefolk size. It's much bigger than the fairies. Much heavier. But yeah, so yeah. There are two completely new races, and then a few sub-races for Dwarf. A few ideas, and that is what I've done with World Anvil so far, is I figured out how to kind of put together a page to do race stat blocks, and then add those to a page to put information on the race. I think I will probably slowly add some of the information from my Google document over to that page. I don't know generally, like, moving forward, am I going to show off World Anvil every time? Maybe not. I might just show off the Google document and just keep the Google document as here's the new info that I haven't talked about, and then go organize it over there afterwards. Because as it is, the information as I talk about it is the stuff before I organize it. It's just at the bottom of the document, like, hey, here's the new stuff. So maybe I'll just keep doing that. I will, at least for now, link down below to the World Anvil world. So if you want to check it out, you can kind of follow along. If you want to go grab ideas, info, you can do that. I think you can comment on the pages. I think there's like a comment section at the bottom. Or, of course, comment on any of the videos. Like, if you are like, yeah, I'm going to talk to my game master, and he says it's cool to play one of those fairies because I like being a tiny fairy instead of a small fairy that Wizard says fairies are, even though none of their fairies are small until they release the race in Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and they're like, well, now they're small because we're afraid of tiny player characters. Come on, man, it doesn't matter. But, so maybe your DM's like, sure, why not? Play tiny. It'd be fun. Please, let me know feedback, because otherwise it's not until one of my players decides, oh yes, I want to try that I get any playtesting done. Otherwise, I'm just kind of building in a vacuum, and I would love to know if you try any of this stuff, how it works out, if you enjoy it, if you figure out, hey, that thing there, that's totally broken. Let me know. otherwise, yeah. So, been trying out World Anvil, and so far I've only played with the free stuff. But I now have the subscription to get rid of the ads for the videos, so I'm going to play with some of that too. I can now edit the CSS coding, and should be able to therefore reformat things, so I might be able to finally get rid of when you use a normal text block and get rid of the top header for the race stat block. But yeah, that's kind of where I've gotten to on my world building now. Hopefully I will be able to put more work into doing more of it sooner rather than later. Otherwise, these videos have been coming out quite far apart from each other. Life's busy. But when I sit down and I work on it and I look into this stuff with the world, I'm having fun with it. And part of me is like, oh, I can't wait to play in it. And part of me is like, I have so much to do before it's ready to play in. So I don't know what I'm gonna do next. But I'm having fun. Like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. Thank you for watching.